Hey everybody, it's Matt here. Kind of a lazy Sunday, raining out there off and on, just hanging around the house, and so I thought I would continue on with my Beach Boys album review series. And for anyone that's watching the Kink series, I've finally ordered the final album that I didn't have. There's two more albums to go in that, and I didn't have the second to last one. So that should be showing up here sometime this week, and I'll get and finish the Kinks off. But anyway, went ahead and started the Beach Boys, and I already did their first three albums. So this brings us to their fourth album, Little Deuce Coup, was released on October 7th of 1963. This album is noteworthy for a couple of reasons. One is that if you saw my last video where I reviewed the album before, Surfer Girl, that album came out September 16, 1963. This one, October 7th, 1963, so they recorded albums really quick back in those days. It's less than a month later and a new Beach Boys album comes out. It's also David Marks, the guitar player in the early Beach Boys albums. This marks his last album as a Beach Boy. He would leave the band shortly after this was released. Al Jardine, who had played on their first 45 and didn't play on their first and left after that, didn't play on the first couple of albums, he's back in the mix and he becomes a full-time member again, and Marks moves on, not to return for 30-40 years. He would be back in 2012's album, That's When God Made the Radio, when they did the reunion 50th anniversary tour. He participated in that and played on the album. He also had rejoined the Beach Boys as a touring member back in the either late 80s or the early 90s, but wasn't on any of their albums then. So this was his kind of swan song for 50 years or so later, and kind of a shame because he seemed like a cool guy, but he left the band over differences with Murray Wilson, Brian and Dennis and Carl Wilson's father, who was by all accounts pretty much of a jerk, and so was kind of forced out of the band. But anyway, he's gone. And the other noteworthy to mention about this album is this is the final album the Beach Boys would release before Beatlemania hit America. So October 63, and their next album would not come out until March of 64, by which time the Beatles had kind of changed the game. And so yeah, this album, even though it was released less than a month after the previous album, it did get to number 4 on the charts. What happened was Capitol Records, which is Beach Boys' label, put out a compilation album of car and hot rod songs, because just like surfing music, hot rod music was kind of all the craze back in 62, 63. So Capitol Albums put out this compilation album, and they included the Beach Boys song 409 without the group's permission or knowledge, and the band wasn't that happy about it, but there wasn't much that they could do. So Brian Wilson, that prompted him to write some more songs and get the band back in the studio and put out a new album. So that's why that was done so quickly, I guess. On this album, there are 12 tracks. 8 of them are new. 4 of them are from previous albums. This is the first of their albums to repeat songs from earlier albums, which was also a pretty common thing back in the early 60s on a lot of bands' records to have songs that had just been on a previous album. So despite being rushed, I mean, there's in some ways you can see Brian Wilson making strides as a songwriter here, but for all of that, this is just an okay album. So let's do the track by track. Let me make sure I didn't. Oh yeah, the fact that most of the songs on here are about hot rods or cars, some people have called this sort of an early example of a concept album, even though there's no storyline per se. It's just, it happens to have a lot of songs about cars, which kind of begs the question of their first couple albums had a lot of songs about the beach and surfing, so I don't know if those were concept albums or not. But anyway, some people kind of think of that as a concept album. The cover here, this is the my least favorite cover of their first four albums. Though I do kind of like the graphics here, but the cover is this car, and you can't really see the guy because he's cut off, but this picture of the guy in his car appeared on the cover of Hot Rod magazine back in 1961 or 2, and the band, I guess, saw the picture and liked it, or Capitol Records, one or the other, so they used the cover for the album cover and cropped the picture. It's 1932 Ford Coupe. That's why Deuce Coupe, because of the year 232. The car belongs to a guy named Clarence Chili Catallo, who actually passed away in 1998. But this car still makes the rounds at exhibitions and tours and showcases to, you know, the car on the Beach Boys album. And it's kind of famous in its own right, just as an old roadster hot rod car. So it's 1932 model Ford Model B Coupe, and so that's what the cover's about. The back, we'll go ahead and take a look at it, is no great shakes either. There's some more shots of the cars, the car, and then there's their first three albums, and there's a picture of the band hanging out by the car, and the song listing, some liner notes that say that no surprise that Beach Boys, the most popular surfing group in the land, has jumped right into being the most popular hot rodding group too, blah blah blah. Just listen, you'll get the message. So not much on the liner notes. This is the reissue by I never can remember the name of this company because it's like they got two names, Analog something or other. Yeah, Analog Productions. This is mono, 200 gram vinyl. It's got the insert, same insert on all of I've got their first four albums. I haven't got the others yet. Same insert, just sort of an alternate cover to their first album. I wish they had alternate covers to all of them and had a different picture. But and here's the Beach Boys albums that are planned for release by this company. And I don't think all of them have been released yet. Some of them are upcoming. So I showed you that with the first album, and then that's just sort of a catalog of Analog Productions. They do a whole lot of different types of music, jazz, rock, and everything in between. Got a nice, slick laminate front cover. Really did a great job on these covers. They're thick, heavy stock cardboard, so it's nice stuff. The record's on the old Rainbow Capitol label. It's over there on my record player, so I should have taken it off, but you're familiar with that. And mono and everything sounds really good. So that's that for the backstory of the album. So the songs, as I turn the page of my notes. Alright, first song is Little Deuce Coupe, which had been on Surfing Safari, on Surfer Girl, the album, just less than a month before. So you got the same song twice if you bought both of those albums. It's a good song, but we already talked about that in the Surfer Girl review. Second song, Ballad of Old Betsy, which has lead vocals by Brian Wilson. It's a love song ballad to either Old Betsy, might be a girl or it might be a car. It's kind of hard to tell, that he's singing about. It's a pretty song, but it's not, well, there's really not much else to say about it. It's just a nice little pretty song, but not much to it. Third song is the one everybody knows, Be True to Your School, which is an interesting here on the album version, because there's actually two versions. There's the one that was released as a single, and there's a one on the album version. And the one that most of us are familiar with is the single version that gets played on the radio to this day. The Mike Love sings the lead on it. And the single got to number 6 in America. The big difference is that where you're used to the part with the cheerleaders, you know, pushing back, way back, and all those cheerleader chants throughout the song, those are missing here, and instead you've got the band singing this sort of rising intonation, vocal melody, this ah in that place, which is kind of a strange if you're not used to that and you're used to the single. It's a different take on the song. I like the single better. The album track is nice and interesting and fine for what it is, but the single is better, and the vocal and the pace on the single sped up a little bit more, the tempo from the album track. The album track's nice, but it's good that they went back and did another run through it before they put it out as a single, because they definitely improved the song by taking a second look at it. The fight song, the whole Push 'em back, is from the University of Wisconsin's fight song on Wisconsin, which I doubt that they do that anymore. They do that jump around thing at their football games now, but this would have been their fight song back then. Not that the Beach Boys in California at that time probably knew too much about what was going on in University of Wisconsin, but on Wisconsin sounds very similar. Some of the members of the band explained later to the Hawthorne High School fight song, which is where most of the Beach Boys went to high school. So the cheerleader parts, which I said are on the single, not on the album, are by the Honeys, which was sort of a female version of the Beach Boys that Brian Wilson put together. He did some other, wrote songs for other bands and did some production stuff even from very early on. And I think, wasn't it one of the girls from the Honeys was the girl that became his wife? Forget her name, but anyway. And then some girl named Cindy Sunshine, who I'm not sure who that is, but they provide that cheerleader vocal thing. I thought they actually, got cheerleaders from a high school or USC or something to do that, but no, it's those people. So it's a really good song. It's one of my favorite songs of theirs, even though it's kind of back in young and innocent days and cornball, and I always liked that song a lot. But the single is quite an improvement over the album track. Fourth song is called Car Craze Cutie, which is just sort of about, I guess, fangirls or groupie girls that hung around the kids with their guys with their hot rod cars scene back in the early '60s. It's okay. It's not a bad song. Brian sings lead. It's sort of a early '60s, pre-Beatles '60s sounding song by numbers. Really, there's not a whole lot to it. The next song up is sort of more of the same. Cherry Cherry Coupe, Coupe, about a car again, and just okay. It's nothing, no great shakes again. Then we have 409, which had also appeared on Surfing Safari, the band's debut album. Good song, but here it is again, less than about a year later. So that closes out side one. So you really don't have, Little Deuce Coupe and 409, good songs. Be True to Your School is the highlight of side one, even though, like I said, the single is a lot better. Ballad of Old Betsy, Car Crazy Cutie, and Cherry Cherry Coupe are just, they're just okay songs. There's nothing special about them. And just to make a note, this is why I decided to do this with the Beach Boys, because for my own fun more than anything, I'm not that familiar with the band. Everybody knows them, of course, and I do too, but I know the hits and outside of, say, Pet Sounds, the Smile album, I'm not very familiar with their album tracks. So I kind of thought this would be fun to go through their albums just for my own, to see if there's any great hidden album tracks lurking in these albums. And on the first three, I have found some. Side one here, the three that I didn't know are nothing terrible, but nothing great either. So yeah, there's side one. So we move on to side two. Side two opens with Shutdown, a song that was on Surfin' Safari, their second album. So it's making a repeat appearance here. Second song is Spirit of America, another car song. It is about Craig Breedlove's record-breaking car. I looked up and read. I don't know who Craig Breedlove is, but his car was called the Spirit of America, and I don't know if it, broke a speed barrier or if it was a race car that he won a lot of races or something. So it's a pretty nice song, though. It's again nothing spectacular, but it's a nice, good song. So yeah, then we have the next song up, number 9 on the album, ninth track on the album, Our Car Club, which had been on the Surfer Girl album less than a month before. It's a good song, but second time around, it's not any better than it was the first time around. Okay, so number 10, No Go Showboat, which Brian and Brian Wilson and Mike Love share lead vocals on. Um, it's this might be the highlight of the album, not counting the hits as far as Little Deuce, Coup, and 409 and all those things we all know. But really like this song. It's got a nice middle eight instrumental break there with hand claps and guitar. It's got pretty good vocals. Mike Love, I guess it is singing falsetto, kind of high falsetto throughout some of it, which isn't so great, but there's other parts of it that are really good vocally. It's just I like it. It's a good song, solid song. Probably was not good enough to have been a 45 to be a major hit or anything, but it's a great solid album track, and that and Be True to Your School are the two highlights of the album on here so far for me. Um, then we have a No Go. Oh no, I'm sorry. Back up. No Go Showboat. I was looking at the wrong thing, and I don't want to start this over again. So No Go Showboat is all show and no go type car or something. It looks really nice and beefed up and fancy, but it's really doesn't have anything under the engine, I guess. So it's got a great line in there when it comes to speed. I'm just out of luck. I'm even shut down by the ice cream truck, which I thought was kind of funny, a bit silly but funny lyric. I like that. So okay, number 11 song is called A Young Man Is Gone, which is about James Dean, kind of a tribute to James Dean. He died without a cause. They sing it a cappella with no instrumentation behind them. This is actually an old song written by someone named Bobby Troup that was originally titled Their Hearts Were Full of Spring. Mike Love revised the lyrics and changed it into a James Dean tribute. And it's a song that Troup wrote back in, I don't know when he wrote it, 40s or 50s, but Jimmy Rogers, the Four Freshmen, the Letterman, they've all done versions of it. The Circle, remember that band, Red River Ball? And so the Beach Boys kind of revised the lyrics and made it their own. And, James Dean tribute, and it's, again, it's a good song. It's not a great song. And so the number 12 is a song called Custom Machine, final song on the album. Love sings lead here. It's got a neat little spoken word throughout it that step on the gas, step on the gas, she goes. I think that's Mike Love saying that. Maybe it's Brian. But it reminds me of the song Young Man Blues, if you remember that, by Mose Allison. Probably most of you remember the Who doing it on Live at Leeds album, where it's, you get a job, son, or whatever the spoken word part is. So it's kind of a okay song. The one thing about that and some of these other songs on here is that you notice that the lyrically they're still sort of in the teeny bop or pre-Beatle subject matter, kind of the innocent Leave It to Beaver dates type music, but the musical arrangements are getting a little more complex and so forth. So that wraps up the track listing. This album is kind of the Beach Boys treading water, or at least it represents a step backwards from Surfer Girl, and even from their second album, where Brian had sort of started lyrically getting into more substantial or mature theme things. In My Room, Surfer Girl, Lonely Sea, things like that. There's really nothing on par with that. This is more sort of the fun. Again, pre-Beatle music, I guess the best that I can think of term. Which all of this stuff must have seemed, really cool and hip in 1962 and 1963. But again, a few months from now, the Beatles are going to show up, and then followed by the Stones and the British invasion and all that. And a lot of this is going to seem pretty passe. But fortunately, the Beach Boys were able to adapt to that and keep writing songs that were, I mean, they always seemed a little bit Wally and Beaver to me, but they still wrote some songs that they didn't just get stuck in this period and stay there and get forgotten. So this album, I say the least of the first four of their releases. On a scale of 1 to 10, just on the hits alone, I mean, those are good, but scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this a 6 because the non-hit or the album tracks, non-single album tracks, whatever you want to call it, No Go Showboat's really great, and Be True to Your School is pretty great, though it's not as good as the single. So I mean that doesn't really count either. But none of the other album tracks on here. Custom Machine is, I'll give that. That's okay. But the rest of this stuff is just kind of take it or leave it. And if you haven't heard it, you're really not missing out. So 6, I guess, for that one. And I'll be back with more Beach Boys. That's as far as I've bought into their album catalog. So I'll have to get the other ones, and I'll be back at some point when I do to review going forward. All right, everybody. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.